Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Minahan and her panel of guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for soul growth. Come journey with us through astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello and greetings, everybody. This is Neptune in Aries, Emerging Truth. What is the truth? Is there a real truth? Yes, of course there's truth. And perhaps on the flip side, what's the falsehood? Well, it's a process. We're in this autonomy time of Aries leading ahead, but we're not quite there. It's going to be at the end of the month. And I have a wonderful panel that we're going to dissect, integrate, analyze. We won't even do that. We might just tell stories. We don't know, because really when it comes to Neptune, the energies are beyond and it's all unified. We are one, whether we know it or not. Okay, we are ready for Planet Buzz.
Focusing on perspectives of pattern planet cycle relationships and understanding their archetypal energy consciousness, reflecting through history, current events, mythology, and philosophical questions, these are the members of Planet Buzz.
I'm Sue Minahan, founder of Talk Cosmos since 2018. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, consultant, speaker, writer, vibrational astrology student, Dwarf Planet University graduate, Kepler Astrology Toastmasters Club charter member. I have a fine arts music degree plus a certificate in jazz. I'm an artist, musician, and certified color energy life coach. Especially, I love mythology and esoteric philosophies.
And I'm Dr. Laura Tad. I work as a spiritually oriented psychological astrologer with students and clients around the world. As a counselor, writer, and educator, I love helping people recognize their inner strengths, take advantage of auspicious moments, and navigate times of challenge with greater ease. On my own podcast, Mythic Sky Storytime, I discuss astrology, mythology, and actualizing our full potential. Learn more at mythicsky.com.
Plus, a special guest who we will introduce in just a short moment.
And as the ancient Hermetic code reveals,
as below, so above. As above, so below.
Hello, Laura, Dr. Tad.
Hi, Sue.
Yeah, I think we're meeting across many sea journeys that you've had across to the British Isles and down to Central America. And I feel as though this morning there was a bit of technological challenges for me, which is all behind the scenes. But I think that's part of just our subject, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of shifting going on in the world, right? I mean, our topic today is Neptune, but we're just in the early days of Venus having turned on her heels, so that could be part of this. And we're still in the shadow of Mars catching up, right? So
an eclipse season
that's been going on.
It absolutely. Thank you for all of that. And we might bring some of these points to our audience a little bit further, but right now I want to introduce our wonderful special guest, Sean. Ta-da, there you are. Hi, Sean. Greetings again. Yeah, you were here with us in January about the nodes, this new venture. So I will mention about, yes, pardon me.
I said more Neptunian stuff. We were talking about that, and here we are.
That's right. This is exciting. Sean Kelly is near the Mount Shasta area in California, and his website is Evolutionary Astro. He's a speaker, an executive, a motivational leadership master, and focuses on digital business since 1998. He's worked with many of the world's renowned astrologers. A few of them are Kelly Fox, Jan Spiller, Henry Seltzer, Michael Luton, Jeff Jowers, and Rick Levine. And Sean was very instrumental in the 2000s driving business for Tarot.com. Sean, it's a pleasure.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Dr. Laura.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Laura, our dear friend.
Mhm.
Well, here we are. And these, again, are just our sites. They're Mythic Sky for Dr. Tad, myself, Talk Cosmos, and Evolutionary Astro for Sean. With big subjects, it's always how do you organize this? And really, my goal is to hear us expound on what it means. So these are only meant to be touchstones, right? I thought, well, identifying the fact that it's a 14-year cycle is probably important because it snips into it, or snips, I don't know if that's the right word, it glimpses into it up until October, and then it blips out until the beginning of January. So these are for people to see, but it will go until 1939. Maybe we should talk about the archetypes a bit. Laura and Sean, you want to start off with what are these?
I'll just throw out a Rick Tarnas quote that I came across when I was kind of leaning into our content today, and then hand it over to Laura. And it's really kind of a mind twister. Rick Tarnas's comment on Neptune is the archetype of the archetypal.
I like it. Yeah, the big, the grand encompassing. It is, isn't it? Yes, it brings the oneness.
Oh,
Laura,
yeah.
do you have any?
Because if we think about Neptune, one of the adjectives or languaging that we have given to Neptune that we interpret as Neptune, right? So yes, he's the god of the sea, Poseidon in Greek mythology. But in psychology, water is very much associated with the unconscious. Regardless of the body of water, all bodies of water are tied to the unconscious, and then in different ways, if it's the sea versus a river versus a brook versus a puddle, right? All of that is the unconscious. And so I think that's what Tarnas was getting at, is that the archetypes live in our collective unconscious. It's that idea that of the universal mother, the universal child archetype. And so Neptune being connected to our unconscious and the collective unconscious, then its archetype is the unconscious in part. Right? It's one of the things that we've put on Neptune. We also associate Neptune with music and religion and escapist avoidant behavior. So that shows up with drugs and alcohol, right? All of that is in Neptune's realm, regardless of sign. And so as we're in this transitional period, right, it's like that, the coloring, I've probably talked about this before, the analogy I give clients, which is becoming less and less relevant because everything is digitized now. But I think of the sign in relation to a planet like a theater gel, right? When I did theater in high school, right, you literally put a piece of plastic over a light to change the color that was projected on the stage. Now it's all digitized, but that same idea of like the color, the light's always the light. Neptune's always Neptune. And then its color is altered based on its manifestation is tweaked based on the sign that it's shining through. And so that's this transitional period that we're moving into as it's on the verge of shifting out of Pisces, where it's been for quite some time, into Aries, even though it's just sort of dipping a toe before he goes retrograde.
There's this, Laura, you mentioned religion, and I see with the Neptune move into Aries that it's kind of like newfound way of religion might come into our focus here. And I think about that word religion and where it came from, religio in the Latin, and it's in the Latin, it was a word that meant binding back, or how religion ties things together. So it, or it's to gather again. It's like to, and it's duty, reverence, sacred obligation in Roman life is kind of where that religio word came from. And now, we see the evolution of that into modern culture where it embodies faith systems. So with Aries, like being that, all things Aries, that, charging forward in a new direction and, all that stuff. It's interesting to kind of maybe look at the religious landscape as it is right now and then see where it might be going. I think we'll get a little glimpse of that, of course, not solidifying until, Neptune is fully embodied in Aries and doesn't go back into Pisces.
It is a 14-year process. That's really important. You're so right. And water, it is that dissolvent. Water is the ultimate dissolver. So I love this idea of bringing personally hoping and looking forward to this, embracing a larger spectrum of what we consider to be our faith, the spiritual essence of it. It's so true.
Yeah. And keeping in mind, so yes, it's in a sign for a extended period of time compared to the personal or social planets. And it's, while not as long of a cycle as Pluto, no one on the planet was incarnated the last time it ingressed into Aries. It's around 163-year cycle, right? So it's not been here in any of our lifetimes. While we could look to history to see events that were occurring the last time he ingressed into Aries, none of us have lived through that. The people that were born with it in the most recent history, right? They're not around anymore.
No, we'll look at some of those personalities, which I'm glad we had a little pre-chat before, and that'll be at the end. We'll kind of look at some of those people because it is very strong. They were just amazing personalities. But looking at the archetype, because it is this merging, you're absolutely right, of the autonomy, the courage, the start, taking that womb seed and trying to become everything that we know about Aries, but in this dissolvent, unified, larger than existence archetype of archetypes.
There were some collective kind of like looks that I gave things, like in Pisces, it's about unity and those things. And Aries is about individuality. So there's this shift there from this unity focus to like, okay, how does that affect me personally? You mentioned courage, spiritual courage comes into focus with that. And Neptune does embody like illusions here too, right? Or the illusions. And I thought, illusions of invincibility, the word invincible came at me because of the Aries, like charge forward. I am going to win the war. Technological pioneering. Of course, we've seen a ton of that with Pluto and Aquarius, and it just further gets driven, I think, with Neptune and Aries. And then conflict and resolution becomes a big piece of Neptune now.
Yeah. And I think too, it's interesting to think about it in terms of the element itself of, right, Pisces or Neptune governing water, right? And then you merge that with Aries and thinking about how water's an element we can't control very well. We don't, in terms of its direction. Water goes where it's going to go. Right?
It's its own line, as they say. Yeah.
Well, but, when there's torrential rain, water's going to go where water's going to go. We can try to control its direction, but it's pretty forward. It goes one direction, which is very Aries, right? That rivers all go one direction on one side of the planet and another direction on the other side of the planet. It's a singular direction, which again is that very Aries energy that can be those horse blinders of Aries. And so seeing more of that too, potentially in that potential for illusion or delusion, like single-minded, like illusion that's very directed, if that makes sense.
Or evasive, because delusion, where does it begin? And it is diluted. It's like a mirage, seeing an oasis out in the desert. It doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, I can see that in the, detriment aspect, but I also see where like Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, not to get into rulership here, but Neptune does embody the energies of Pisces. And when I consider Neptune in Pisces, I consider, okay, I might be able to see my individuality more clearly or more dilutedly if I was looking at it in the other way, but also like how it affects the group or the unity there, because it is the planet of unity that's moving into this phase of individuality. And I can see we're on the positive side, or looking at the glass.
I like that. I like that in the sense that what you're bringing up really identifies that contrast, because we will be feeling that in the next year, where we enter Aries and then we retract back to Pisces and then we re-enter. But the beautiful thing about Aries is you're always becoming and always attempting something new. So if this doesn't work, well, okay, fine, ditch it. I mean, that would be the ideal. Sometimes it's a little harder, but still it's a whole process. And then of course the polarity of Libra, where you begin to realize who you are through that reflection. So it's going to be intense. My goodness.
Oh yeah. On a personal note, I just took some, I was just kind of brainstorming this, and like identity awakening came to mind.
Yes, exactly. I like that identity
dreaming,
awakening.
meeting, drive. The risk of burnout comes into play.
Well, right now we have Mars out of bounds, which, is a seed point, and it has been since January. And of course it rules Aries, and we'll be going over this big shadow area all the way till May. And that's pretty, burnout is.
I can see in that sense of the illusion that I can have more energy than I do. Right. I think that's where there's that vulnerability to burnout.
Amen. Bravo.
Right.
Yeah.
I can work a 16-hour work week for, 16-hour day for 6 days in a row for the next 6 months. Yeah. Not if you don't want to destroy your adrenals. Right. Yeah. And so that being mindful of where we're putting our energy, because we may think that we have more reserve than we do.
Well, and let me just summarize that here on the fourth point, because I think this is like the big one for me personally, especially I got Saturn on Chiron today. Woohoo. Healing through action. So in Pisces, we were healing via surrendering and compassion, and Aries was by like fighting for something. And Neptune might help us dissolve old wounds by fueling courage.
I think this is very valuable. Yes, thank you, Sean, because the world is change all the time, meaning it loves action. It wants to have a step forward. If you just sit in a numb state, there's no motion. They say dance, do something.
I thought of this as like therapy through really bold moves versus like quiet introspection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that may be part of this dance throughout this year, right? Of like, we take action and then we numb out because it gets back into Pisces.
Yeah, exactly. We get to review, like, how did that feel anyway? Are you are you sinking yet?
And I wonder too, piece of this with the action, right? I mean, it isn't there yet, but we often talk about, I think Rick Levine is the one who talked about, like, these big shifts announce themselves, right? Or it hasn't ingressed yet, but we're on the precipice of it. And like I don't know, I asked Sean if he had seen it, Sue, but maybe you've seen it. The event that happened at the governor's ball 2 weeks ago, where the Army choir performed a mashup of songs from Les Miserables in front of Trump and every governor in the country. And Les Miserables is about the French Revolution.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it in
New York. I bring that up in part because one of the things we give Neptune is music.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes. art.
And
music.
so this idea of music being a way of fighting.
Absolutely.
Oh, interesting.
I've thought of that too. Yes.
Right. So what might show up?
Film.
What kind of political music might we see coming out of this period is a way of voicing what people are feeling. And will music be a part of this period of using, in a very direct way, using music to make points?
Just like in the 20s when they'd go across the trains, Arlo Guthrie and all those folks, there were a couple of them, right? And they rallied the unions and they rallied people. And music from the very beginning has been a unifier. Here, I think we'll bring converging. Now that's not a word. Converging, the merging and converging. I was thinking the archetypes that we've already been talking about, but I really believe we've covered these pretty much. Power and leadership will be, and personal autonomy, illusion, magnetizing our dreams. I think that's what you're bringing up, Sean, and I think, and this quantum energy, we'll talk about more. Okay, that's it. I thought these are not to be focused on, but they're current. I think in our very beginning, Laura, you brought up the fact that we have the Mercury retrograde and the solar eclipse, but just
the Venus retrograde.
Thank you.
Venus is currently retrograde.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, of course, and Venus, until the 15th. And we're not, well, no, Mercury will retrograde and Venus is retrograde right now.
Yeah, I find Venus retrograde in Aries, where it's at, to be incredibly valuable about looking at your values right now, kind of, and it's kind of ushering in, Neptune being like that, some say higher octave of Venus. It's kind of like setting the stage for Neptune to make its presence announced. I think it's really beautiful timing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I had a slide for Neptune. Sometimes I did. Oh, yeah, I think I did right here. Venus conjunct Neptune, because later, but let's go back and shall we look at the chart?
Yeah, I'd love that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Here we go. So this is on March 30th. This is an Aries point chart. So it's 0 degrees at the ascendant, but it was in Greenwich just after 12 o'clock at noontime.
What a beautiful chart. It really is a beautiful chart. I love that learning trine there with the Mars, Uranus, and Mercury, all like, and the nodes, the Uranus sitting at that point of Thales. There's like a bread basket of sextiles at the bottom of the chart.
Bread basket. What a great term.
Yeah. With the South node at 27, all the way to the North node at 27, and then Saturn's playing in there too. I'm really looking forward to this ingress of Neptune into Aries. It looks really exciting.
It does. You had a thought there, Laura?
I'm just looking at all of what's going on, that, this, so much of the sky are in these two signs. Right. And so this Piscean Aries dance that we've got multiple planets doing, right, is that is a big part of this story, that Mercury retrograding back in, and Venus doing that dance back and forth, Neptune will be doing that dance back and forth, that this trying to find that balance between those two things. Early when I was studying astrology, one of my first astrology teachers talked about how every sign is in response to the previous.
True.
Right.
Yeah. It's a process, development. Yeah.
Right. So if we look at Aries is responding to what could be seen as the passivity of Pisces. Right.
And then, sister. Yeah.
And so this dance back and forth between that rushing energy of Aries and the, but let's just sit here and observe energy of Pisces, and that need to go back and forth in multiple areas, right? So yes, with the Neptune, but also in how we're thinking, what do we value? And this dance between, to be the most effective in how we move forward, it necessitating reflection.
Yeah,
well,
go ahead.
Yeah, Venus at 28. Okay, so I look at where the sun is, where the light is in this chart, and the light is at 10 degrees Aries, where Venus did go retrograde in Aries. So
yes,
I think that Venus has got a lot to say here. And about where we were at when, when she went retrograde. And maybe those things that came up there are the things that will be addressed when Neptune revisits Pisces. Mm-hmm. So I do consider that.
That's a good thought. I like that.
Looking at Uranus' position in this chart, it's like stuff that like came out of the blue that might make us reconsider. Mm-hmm. When Neptune goes retrograde. I think it's the 22nd of October or something.
And also listening to Venus because it's in Taurus. And then looking at what if I may jump in, about Mars, because Mars is out of bounds, ruling all that Aries. So of course it wants to have action city.
I love Mars at 23 Cancer. I don't know why. It just really lights me up. It's sensitive and it yet wants to move things forward in a sensitive way. Mm-hmm. And it wants to nurture things as it goes. It being in such a beautiful supportive position to the nodes and to Uranus. Yes. I'm really excited about what opportunities are going to come up or what we might see come up culturally, politically, etc.
And there will be sudden things because here we just have a few minutes and there's just two more to go. But one is at this point of Thales, which is when there's an opposition and one planet, which happens to be Uranus here, is the point of Thales because it's sextile and trine. And I'm identifying this for other people listening. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it's like a resolution point. So this supports that emphasis that you brought up, Sean, of Uranus, that by bringing in the sudden, the immediate, now, the unexpected, that although it may seem chaotic in its own way, it is helping to mitigate some of these tensions and offer opportunities. So it's pretty amazing. Oh, and we'll go to the last one here. And then we can chat for a second. But the nodes are conjunct.
Yeah.
South and north. So this is a real yin-yang, steamy type of rebirth happening.
Well, yeah, it's being the point of Thales for Uranus, for the nodes of like here, like what we're focused on cleaning up with Virgo, especially Virgo cleaning stuff up as a south node there, and like learning how to like let go of some boundaries with that north node and that tension. I believe that the Pisces Virgo axis is like the magic of the zodiac. It's like that's where it's like that opposition like creates magic, and to see Uranus down there supporting this and like doing breakthroughs that help clean things up while releasing boundaries.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's magical. Good. Mm-hmm. Well, I think we'll come back and we'll look at this when we return. There'll be just a moment, folks. We're in the process of swimming into Neptune. So stay with us with Sean Kelly and Dr. Laura Tad on Planet Buzz, Emerging Truth. See you in a moment.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Pisces, ruled modernly by Neptune and by Jupiter in traditional astrology of the ancients. By leaving a cycle based on the equality of all humans and brilliancy, Pisces concludes the 12 signs that energetically encompass the entirety of the universe, where humans have no control. As a mutable water sign represented by two fish swimming in opposite directions of the forces of life, we experience in Pisces the collective unconscious energy of the unknown. Intuitive, psychic Pisces completes the seed cycle, initiated with Aries' willful separation from the Piscean womb.
Talk Cosmos brings insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for the soul growth with hour-long programs. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. And to find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com. So grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
This is Martha Norwalk, every Sunday morning beginning at 9 a.m. Thanks in part to Dr. Nels Rasmussen at healingministryforanimals.com, we cover the world of animals. This week, March 16th, it's Behavior Training and Healing Sunday with me, and talk with your human or animal loved ones on this side or the other, and personal readings with Natasha Venter. Hope you can join us and plan to call in with questions for either one of us or a personal reading with Natasha. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Seattle, Tacoma, Antwerp. That's right. We're streamed worldwide on our app and on the web at 1150kknw.com.
Oh, did we lose Sean? Oh, goody, he's there. All right. So we'll kind of go through these. But Venus, which we've been bringing in, Laura, you mentioned about the values. All of us are agreeing with this. It just before the ingress with Neptune, it was in Pisces at 29. So we know that's a very powerful point because it will go back to just 29 before, in October to, I think, January. But May 2nd, it'll also be at an important point at 1 degrees Aries. So it'll be in that shadow path just to let us know that things are stepstoning. Stepstoning? I don't think that's a word.
Well, when I think of 29 Pisces, right? Yeah, I see that as like the absolute end of everything. It's the garbage collector of the zodiac. It's where everything, because Aries won't start new unless everything is like done, and it's like Aries can't hold on to anything. It's like a super dry. It's a spark, and a spark is like nothing was there before, and suddenly there's this fire. I think about the dryness of a spark when I think of Aries at 0, especially. And 29 Pisces being like, everything is just like completely done. It's so done. It's burnt down to a crisp done. And so this like Neptune going back into Pisces, where I think it hits 29. Unlike
it does.
Right?
And we'll see that ahead. Yes, it's pretty potent, that kind of waffling back and forth.
Yeah, usually it's like the unfinished business that we get to see with that learning trine that we then integrate kind of the learning trine over the summer and, early fall.
That's a good point. Yeah, we'll look. That's very good. At the break, usually, and I hadn't quite finished the last slide.
So I'm sorry.
No, you're doing fine, Sean. And we're getting through this. This is good. But great. I do bring attention to our guests. And Laura, you have an Edmonton Astrology Society, which is, I think, in a week.
Wow.
On the 14th. Yeah, people can still join. It's free for members and $10 for non-members. So if people go to astrologyedmonton.com with the events, you can hear Laura talk about family dynamics. And then Sean Kelly is, evolutionary astro, just to bring this up, because and I don't think, do you have any talks? I know you had one
No,
at
I don't have
Tucson.
any talks.
Okay.
I've been working very heavily with Susie Cox over the last year, and so we're about to launch some things together, and that's where
goody.
my astrological time has been focused. Is with
on AstroJam. One of these times you can tell us the secrets of what, so people can enjoy. Well, not now, but later. Yeah, Talk Cosmos. I did. Coming up, we have AstroJam next week, and it's going to look at both the eclipses in a very dynamic way, which we do by personifying the planets. And then after that, there's always the quarterly vibrational astrology theme messages that Linda Berry gives, which is so powerful. It's a message to kind of keep in the back of your minds of what those energies are. And of course, Talk Cosmos has these wonderful other about the Venus retrograde and current moons. So for those that subscribe, we thank you so much. Briefly to comment that Marie O'Neill, Padma Life Coaching, has a special for her retreat, which is online. And that will be at virtual. Well, you can go into this. It's virtual retreat Caring for the Soul with Evan Bright. Or going to Padma Life Coaching and find out. And just a heads up, if you've wondered about vibrational astrology, there's going to be a new conference online on Labor Day with Linda Berry and David Cochran and others. And there'll be a beginner's track and an advanced track. So if you don't know anything about the dynamics of it, think about it.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Now let's jump right back in. So here we have quite a few slides, but what does this show? This shows, I think, what we've been talking about, 2025 and 2026, how it's transiting.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's the dates there.
Yeah, March 30th. Go ahead. I think you're about to say something. And it just to remind people, of course, Saturn on April 26th also ingresses Aries. And then next year on the 20th, they conjunct. And I think this is so powerful. Neither one of them really go away from 0 degrees. They're both hovering there. And they finally make their great connection in February. But in the meantime, Neptune will retrograde beginning in summer, which you were, and then in December go, anyway, it'll go back so people can, shall we go on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just to say with that particular conjunction, right? So they get really close this year, and then, but they don't actually, the conjunction doesn't perfect. And I had to go back to 1703 to find them conjunct in Aries.
We're going to do those. Yes, yeah. That's right. In fact, though,
but Neptune has been in Aries prior to that, but the last time it coincided with Saturn was the early 1700s.
Yes. In fact, you're right.
3. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I made this little snippet of the 3 charts. The 1703 that the Saturn conjunct Neptune, and then the USA's at 7076, and then the current one coming up with, which will be next year in February, and to see what does it mean for us? Well, this was the only real conjunction, which is powerful because the North Node in 1706 is conjunct our natal sun and also conjunct Jupiter that will be in Cancer next year. And that seems to be very strong for lunar dimensions. I mean, that's a whole subject. We'll have to focus on that. Huge.
That last slide you were on there, Sue, when I was studying Neptune and Aries, I came across that last time it was there, and it literally went into Aries the day after the Civil War started. And I was like, whoa, and I think it was within 12 hours or something, because I think they started the Confederates started attacking one of the Union forts in the wee hours of the morning. So anyway, it just, given the political and geopolitical landscape of things and how disruptive everything is, I looked at that. I was like, okay, that's a little scary to talk about.
Yeah, but I think it also, another side of that is it was the Emancipation Proclamation, right? Is like that happened there. Another totally unrelated but similar archetypally was the beginning of the underground, not the Underground Railroad in terms of slavery, the underground in London, their subway.
Oh, wow.
Happened at the same time. The first underground in London opened up, which is that subterranean thing that in some ways is Neptunian, but it's moving, right? And so there is like this hidden movement, Neptune hiding things, hidden movement that started in London right around the same time. So other ways that we can think of this as manifesting this, it can be easy.
Well, Gemini's transportation, so that's true too.
It can be easy to go into the dystopian picture because often when you Google historical events, most of what they give you are the dystopian ones. They don't give you a lot of the happy, shiny, pretty ones. But that is one of the other things that was happening at that time. The other thing that happened towards the end of this cycle was when who we know as Mark Twain was writing, and he's the one who termed the words the Gilded Age, which really was the very, very end of this, and was mostly Neptune in Taurus.
Yeah. Well, I have a thought.
His books where he coined this was during this period, and again, that idea of like action being a form of taking the mask off, right? His writing was all a criticism of what was happening, even though it wasn't overtly criticism, right? Today we see that Tom Sawyer is a criticism of slavery, even though he never directly said that, which is that Neptunian energy.
Yeah, the indirect.
So that was also occurring during that time.
I just listened to Maurice Fernandez this morning before we got on. It was a couple hours earlier with Opa, and he was talking about the mini trine with having Neptune or in between the sextile to the trine between the airs with Pluto in Aquarius, and this is coming up, and Uranus in Gemini later this summer. But the point that he brought up that really responds to this is liberty, the liberation. And because I agree, Sean, it is a little bit like eggshells, like, okay, we know history and we realize that there's been real issues, but coordinating what we're all talking about. One thing too, I will add into that is that Pluto is in Aquarius, along with this configuration, which is more mental. So there will be conflict. There is already tensions. There's a lot of autonomy happening, as we've talked about, a lot of fire and air, which is is expansive and active. But I am thinking intention, as he was bringing up, and what you're perhaps balancing here too, Laura, is that we can hope that the liberation, that we will find means to navigate this a little more simply. I mean, simply in the sense that there will be a lot lost and a lot gained, but what's the end result? We hope.
And I think too, right, if we think about Neptune from the perspective of the higher octave of Venus, right, that you brought up, Sean,
yes.
And when I look at it with clients, and I'm looking, I've just had a slew of clients that have had Neptune in the 10th natally. And to me, that is always a sign that somebody's career has to have higher purpose and higher meaning behind it to have fulfillment in work, right? So if we pair that with Aries, it's then our actions. We are called to have our actions of higher purpose and higher meaning. And if we do not have higher purpose and higher meaning behind our actions, we don't know where to go.
There we have Venus. Thank you. Venus to the rescue, as far as to get some seed thought here.
It's got some power.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, let's use some of this time and we can flip back. I love the whole dynamics that you're both bringing with the philosophy and the thoughts. But I know, Laura, you brought up this about the Neptune in Aries, people with natal. And so I have a list here and we can talk about a few
and I
of them.
added Gandhi. That was one of the
there you go.
additions I put in. Because as we were saying before, like no one alive has experienced this before. And so so what does this look like when it's embodied in a human?
Yes.
Right?
Well, let me name which ones they are for the podcast, because we have a podcast too that do listen. Benjamin Franklin, January 17th, 1706. William Butler Yeats, June 13th, 1865, an Irish laureate, poet, and dramatist. And you added Gandhi. Wonderful. October 2nd, 1869, a nonviolent resistance leader. Calvin Coolidge, July 4th, 1872, the 30th USA president. And pardon if I did, we'll talk about Benjamin because he is USA as far as a diplomat, inventor, scientist, author, and can't even stop there. And lastly, in this wonderful team, we have Robert Frost, who was March 26, 1874, also a poet laureate and a Pulitzer Prize winner 4 times and Congressional Gold Medal. And he won all that just nearly before his death, which was like at 86, which was a few years later in 63. I think he did all this in 61. So he had a long legacy. Did we want, Laura, I think you were on a roll here.
So looking at how, right, I mean, it seems like Gandhi's such a beautiful embodiment of these archetypes, right? Of Neptune in Aries as a leader of a nonviolent revolution. I mean, what the greatest possibility of potential of living into that archetype. It just seemed like such a beautiful example of the possibility of that archetype.
Yes, indeed.
We think of Aries as violent and rageful and Mars and that energy, and yet it was this driven energy that was all about the collective and peace and the big picture and being driven by that goal.
Defending peace and a cause at the same time. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I just wanted to put something on the coattails of that because Laura, you said something brilliant there. And now Aries is the warrior, and it's like first decan or its purest form. It's like warrior. But the highest octave of Aries is the strategist that never goes to war.
Yes. The Pallas Athena part of the...
Exactly. And when I think about Neptune, I think about the higher self. I think about spirituality. I think about ways of strategically doing things so that you can get the most out of something without having to fight over it.
Yeah.
For instance, let's look at a few of these. I have Sir Isaac Newton but first let's do Franklin. I think I went according to birth date. So he was born just after 1706, which is interesting. He was born right after that conjunction, wasn't he, in 1703 with Saturn and Neptune. But he was 1706. And he's one of the people that signed the Constitution, helped draft it, and he was created the post system, the libraries.
Mm-hmm.
He also the American Philosophical Society, which I did not realize, besides the University of Pennsylvania. And of course, he was the ambassador of France. So,
Yes.
and did a lot with inventing everything from electricity, he didn't invent electricity, but he did discover some.
He figured out how to capture it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So what an amazing mind to spread out from what you're saying, the spark of existence into these innovative ways. Must have felt so fertile, I've often thought, to have a country where your brain is clicking and anything you want to produce, it needs it. It's like a necessity, mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
We could use everything.
And you could think of, maybe part of how this can manifest, right, is at least natally, right, being driven to go after your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Yes,
right.
Thank you.
That energy being there.
Yeah, I got a couple notes on that. I mentioned inspiration. Neptune gets a fiery kick from Aries, creative projects, spiritual pursuits, long buried desires that surge forward. Aries impatience might clash with Neptune's slow dissolve. Is also a thought that came to mind. So frustration is possible if the visions don't manifest quickly.
It is. But it's learning, isn't it? That what is in charge? And that gets into that spiritual connection of the language of realizing, as we often read, a sign could tell you the direction, or a dream could inspire you.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, we won't go huge into this, but Laura, did you want to talk a little bit about Sir Isaac Newton? And then we have 3 minutes. Maybe we should just mention he was a person that pursued everything from science with light and motion and calculus. I had these out of order. And then Yeats, the great, Yeats was spiritual. Go ahead. I know you had some thoughts here.
He's just one of these very interesting poets to look at because of the era in which he was living in Ireland that was very, very much about the Catholic Church. He was so deeply spiritual and so broader thinking in how he was looking at spirituality. And it's all throughout his poetry, similar to Frost in that way, where he is largely talking about spiritual principles, even though he almost never mentions the word. He doesn't mention the word God, but some Bible, right? In Nothing Gold Can Stay, he does mention Eden, but it's all about the need to go after things, right? Nothing gold can stay, so Eden sank to grief, right? But so this idea of going after what we want because life is finite and taking that action now because we don't know how long we're here is a lot of Frost's, right? Toward roads diverged in the wood, right? And so being proactive, even if we don't know the outcome.
Frost is an interesting example in these because Frost is in Aries, had Venus in Aries, 13 degrees, and Neptune in Aries. So out of the group there, he seemed to be the most weighted in the Aries sector of his chart. And yet
I think that Neptune is what made him gave him the poet, right? If it was just right, that's this poet side.
Absolutely.
What you're saying too reminds me of alchemy. When you're saying, and I'm thinking this whole business between the water and the fire that we'll be experiencing this year. It's a steamy. Yeah, open up the closed letters, do smoke signals. We'll be opening our minds. Thank you so much, Sean Kelly and Dr. Laura Tad.
An honor and pleasure. Thank you.
Real
Thank
pleasure.
You, Dr.
I think we're not submerged. We're merging. We're merging into the waves of the Neptunian consciousness, the oneness. Yes.
Getting ready to surf these new waves.
Yeah.
Right. Till again,
Thank you
folks.
for joining an insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests awaken consciousness by connecting soul growth patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.